So when the defense establishment and the intelligence agencies were all reorganized in 1947, when we changed the Department of War to the Department of Defense, it became an industry. It stopped being a profession of arms and started becoming a career of arms for senior level officers in particular. And at the same time, we start seeing a lack of accountability, because up to that point, we can go back to the Civil War and see Lincoln go through general after general until he got to Grant. And same thing in World War II. George Marshall went through general after general after general, admiral after admiral after admiral, until he got to those names that we all know today who led us to victory in World War II. And that means that there were people in those positions before who didn't measure up. So George Marshall would give them a chance, and maybe a second one, but not a third. And then they'd put somebody in place, regardless of rank, essentially. He would promote people into the rank they needed to be for those positions if they showed promise. That's how we got to these leaders that we all know the last names of. And we lost that after World War II, particularly in Vietnam. Now we start seeing people not held accountable for mistakes. We certainly see it with Afghanistan. 20 years they had to prepare for this eventuality. 20 years. And then the best they can do is what we saw in August of 2021. Someone who has no touch points with the military, never read a book on military history, strategy, tactics, doesn't know anyone in the military, maybe even never seen a military film, can apply common sense to that situation and say, look, wait, it looks like Bagram here would be the tactically advantageous position. Why are we putting our junior level enlisted people at this gate, at this essentially a public airport in Kabul, putting them in a tactically disadvantageous position to get out of there after we had 20 years to prepare to leave? Once again, no one held accountable. And there's a great book. It's called The Afghanistan Papers by Craig Whitlock. And after 2 Freedom of Information Act lawsuits by the Washington Post, they got access to these classified histories of the war. And so they took these generals and admirals coming back and they interviewed them, and they thought these interviews were going to stay classified. And so what Craig Whitlock does once he got access to this is he juxtaposes what they said in private that they thought was going to stay classified to what they said in front of Congress. And they're 180 out from each other. And once again, no one held accountable. All those guys make rank, they fail up, and then sit on boards of defense industry companies going forward. We saw that change 1947 onward.
But how frustrating is it for you, and how infuriating is it as a man who's a veteran, who's served, who's been deployed overseas, who's been in these conflicts, and to see no accountability and to see these poor choices being made over and over again that put veterans' lives at risk, put our lives at risk, and put the entire world in this state right now where we're genuinely concerned about nuclear war, which we haven't been since the 80s. Right. The fall of the Soviet Union was this great moment in history. Oh my God, the Soviet Union is now Russia. It's like they have elected leaders. Everything's going to be great.
Yeah, no, it's tough because you lose friends over there. People lose arms, legs, in wheelchairs. They sacrifice so much, and they're trusting those senior level leaders to make good decisions, politicians and military leaders. And then they see what happens over there, and so it's very natural to ask that question: Was it all worth it? What were we doing over there for all these years, for 20 years? For my own sanity, I just go back to taking those lessons learned and applying them going forward in a way that honors the sacrifice of those who did lose their lives, who didn't come home, or who came home changed forever because of post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury, missing arms and legs. And my hope, and I hate to say hope, is that we can take those lessons and apply them to the next generation so they don't have to learn those same lessons in blood, because we have shown time and time again that we have a very difficult time doing that for some reason. And I don't know why that is, but it's extremely disheartening. And it also sets up that next generation for failure, because you have these people coming up the ranks and they see these generals sit in front of Congress, say certain things. You can go back to every single testimony from these guys, and they all say pretty much the same thing. We're making progress. We just need more money. We need more time.
And privately, what were they saying?
They were saying that this is a disaster. And you can go back and look at these. Then Craig Whitlock spells it all out. He has the transcripts in there. And there's one, it's around the 2009, 2010 timeframe, where there's one senior level official who's in charge of Afghanistan. He doesn't even say anything bad. He's just kind of like, it's not going as great as we may have led you to believe. And then a few months later, he is quietly moved aside and somebody else is put in. So that tells everybody else coming up behind them that, hey, if they want to get this next star and they want to sit on the board of company X, Y, or Z, they better toe this line. And it's an industry.
Is that an issue where the amount of money that's involved in it now because of the military-industrial complex is almost you can't turn that back now because you've turned on that spigot. The amount of money is continuing to flow. These coffers are filling. These people are making so much money. To stop it now and to hold people accountable and to try to like put an end to this chain of failure.
I mean, it's a huge bureaucracy. It's an ecosystem that includes politicians. It includes military leaders, both in uniform and just out sitting on these boards, lobbyists, permanent Washington. It's all a part of this huge infrastructure that is moving forward. And just like any company, you got to show profits.
You know, less than 100 years ago, Eisenhower warned us about this.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of World War II, when he's leaving office, he
50s,
warned
yeah.
us about it in the 50s
Mm-hmm.
and said there is a military-industrial complex. And the crazy thing is that speech at that time aired on television. But it wasn't until the internet where you could pull up that speech at any moment you wanted to on YouTube and just play his words.